It's my pleasure to welcome everybody to this afternoon session of the technology session at the International Association of Women Philosophers Symposium in Paderborn, or in virtual Paderborn University, organized by Ruth Hagengruber and her team from the Center of the History of Women Philosophers and Scientists. And it's my pleasure to welcome Julia Maria Mönig from the Hochschule der Medien in Stuttgart, Germany. And she will give her talk on the topic, the gender of my car, of my car's voice, and other feminist ethical thoughts on philosophy of technology. Please, Julia, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just a quick note. I'm not at Hochschule der Medien anymore now. I'm at University of Bonn, but I recently changed. So I'm working still on similar topics, so on ethical AI. But this talk goes back to a project I've been working on until the beginning of 2020. I'm going to talk about this a bit later. For now, I'm going to start with the second half of my title, so to say, with some other thoughts and feminist thoughts on philosophy of technology. If my presentation is going to do what I wanted to do, then that would be
Click
great.
into the screen and then it often happens.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I brought some examples of technology where I think feminist thoughts and ethical thoughts are necessary. Sorry. So one is an example of translation. I have here a screenshot from a translation of a Hungarian text. Unfortunately, I don't speak Hungarian. I had to copy this from a journalistic text about it. But the point here is that apparently in Hungarian, we don't have gendered pronouns, but it's if you read the text in Hungarian, which unfortunately I can't, sorry, then you don't know who is being talked about. And if you enter this into Google Translate, you will get this. She is beautiful, he is clever, he reads, she washes the dishes, he builds, and so on. So you get the idea that here the machine is gendering the speech, which in the original is neutral, so to say. Another problem is gender micro-targeting, or another phenomenon. As you know, we are all being targeted online, and some of this targeting and targeted advertising is gender-based. So if some platform knows your gender or assumes it, then you might only get certain products shown. So the example would be, or has been shown that, for instance, people who identify, so to say, at least virtually as a woman, they get shown advertisings and product suggestions for handbags, and men get, for instance, suggestions for photo cameras. And another famous or infamous example of gender bias in software is a recruiting tool Amazon has been working on, but they stopped actually apparently the development after the problems were discovered or when they were reported on. So this was a recruiting tool where the system automatically tried to select candidates applying for jobs at Amazon. And this was gender biased because, for instance, if the software would detect the under your hobbies women's chess club, they wouldn't choose the candidate because the data that was behind the system had shown or had taught the system that they only were supposed to recruit men because there were a lot of many more men than women. already in the staff, but apparently they stopped the development. But still, it's an interesting example. And the other example I listed here is kind of the opposite, so to say, from the Automating Society report. In Spain, apparently already since 2007, a software is being used to assess risk cases of domestic violence. And apparently it has already helped to protect women, but it also has shown some problems, for instance, that the officers need, the police officers dealing with the software and the cases need, of course, a certain training, not only the technical training, but also some gender training. So this is, as I said, the second half of the title of my talk. And now I'm going to talk about my car's voice. So it's not, so I'm going to start to say a bit about the project. So we have been working on a project on highly automated cars at the Hochschule der Media University in Stuttgart. And the Institute for Digital Ethics was responsible for the ethical and the legal questions. And we did actually develop ethical recommendations. So the project already started in 2016. So the proposal was written even before that. And back then, everybody was already thinking, or still thinking, that we would be driving autonomous by 2025, which, as we now know will not be the case, because there are so many technical problems still with automated technology and autonomous driving. But the focus on this project was about the cooperation between machine and human. So the assumption was already that there could be some sort of cooperation and not only interaction. And so one of the focuses was a speech. That's also why I'm thinking of the car's voice. And the question was how to prioritize the human commands and the human, the things human.
Julia, we can't hear you anymore. Does everyone hears Julia? I don't hear her anymore. I see your screen, but I can't hear you. Yes. Something happened to your audio function.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, thanks.
Yes, okay.
Again.
Weird, it just changed the microphone. Weird. Zoom just decided to take the other mic, but thank you for telling me. And so I'm going to start my slideshow again and sharing the right screen. So can you see my screen and hear me again?
Yes, very well.
Just going to, now I have to switch this louder. Sorry. That's where I was. So still talking about the autonomous cars. We also worked a lot on speech. So we had to prioritize the command that the human would give the car, especially in the cases when there was a switch and when there was a handover situation between the car and the human, or the automated system and the human. And this was very fascinating because it's not only about the semantics, but also about the intonation, for instance. So, but the whole project was actually about raising trust in autonomous cars and highly automated driving and acceptance, because it was funded by the Federal Ministry for Education and Research. And as I said, we did actually write ethical recommendations. We had an approach called narrative ethics in and by design. So including ethics right from the beginning of a project is our suggestion. And if anybody is interested, you can download it at digitale-ethik.de, or you can find it in the English version in the Springer book edited by Gerrit Meixner. But what I wanted to point out is this question of the cooperation and the question of the speech, because as we have seen, or as we can see, people are treating robots and machines in different ways. So on the one hand, there is the observation that, for instance, people treat their vacuum cleaners like pets. I mean, this has also been seen before these were highly automated or somehow connected machines, because people have been naming their cars for ages. At least in Germany, this is common that people do this. And I mean, also, for instance, ships are very often given female names. And I think in English, it's very often that you call a ship her, right? And she. So that's one part or one side. And the other side is that we can see that machines are being treated like slaves. So there's also the report from the UNESCO. It's called "I'd Blush If I Could," because they have tried out what happens if you confront speech assistants with weird language, so to say, and inappropriate comments. And one of them, I think it's Siri, I'm not sure, it apparently answers, "I'd blush if I could." And here, what is being discussed in the literature is that it's, as Immanuel Kant already said in regard to maltreating of animals, that there could be the problem that if people are maltreating or mistreating robots and machines, then this could lead to people also getting more brutal towards other human beings. And part of this, or problem behind this, is also that we very often anthropomorph the machines. So we treat them like pets or like other humans. And I think Shelley is going to talk later more about the uncanny valley. This means that there is an uncanniness that we feel at unease as if we encounter machines, robots that are human-like but not quite human-like. So there is this feeling where things become a bit weird. And I find it very interesting that Amy van Weinsberg recently has suggested that a solution to this could be that you should not have the machine look like a human at all. And I've brought an example with me, the genderless voice. I'm going to try to share this. If it doesn't work, I've also put, I'm going to put also the link in the chat, just a sec. So, sorry. So this is Q. It's called Q. It's a project by audio designers and several activists that has, they have designed a voice that is from the Hertz frequency. It's supposed to be gender neutral. So I'm going to try to play this to you. I hope you can hear it. If not, there's also the link in the chat, genderlessvoice.com. And it's apparently the middle is 153 Hertz. And I'm going to try to move it also a bit up and down. I hope this works. As I said, if not, you can maybe try it out later.
Hi, I'm Q, the world's first genderless voice assistant. Think of me like Siri or Alexa, but neither male nor female. I'm created for a future where we are no longer defined by gender, but rather how we define ourselves. My voice was recorded by people who neither identify as male nor female, and then altered to sound gender neutral, putting my voice between 145 and 175 Hertz, a range defined by audio researchers. But for me to become a third option for voice assistants, I need your help. share my voice with Apple, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. And together we can ensure that technology recognizes us all. Thanks for listening. Q.
So I hope you could hear that. I'm going to share the presentation again. So this was is an idea that we don't have to choose anymore, for instance, for navigational systems between male and female voices, because there's also people arguing, oh, we use a female voice because it makes people less aggressive. So this has also already been argued years ago, like for instance, for train announcement systems at the rail station and stuff like this. So I don't know, maybe we could also find a solution that we don't make them sound like humans at all. That I think this could also be a way to avoid these problems, and just make them sound like robots, like cliche robots, you know, like not as human-like as they sound already today. I have a quick parenthesis, like a quick thing I wanted to mention, because I thought this was the appropriate place to do so, because I've recently been reading Asimov's I, Robot, and this is famously being quoted for the robotics, the law of robotics that Asimov formulated. And I just realized I forgot to tell you something. I wanted to say something, because when I played Q to a group of engineers and computer scientists, interestingly, they reacted like, oh, this just sounds like a woman with a deep voice, or a man with a high voice. So actually, this was why I wanted to suggest maybe not make them sound as humans at all. And maybe not that surprising that they reacted it, but rather expected to be expected. But yeah. So I wanted to mention Asimov, because I was a bit struck, because he was, I mean, kind of geniusly able to imagine a future where robots were able to do a lot. So there's a story, Robbie, for instance, from 1940, and he's saying that Robbie was already walking and running very good. So the robot here is employed like as a nursemaid, as they call it, and he can play catch with a girl, but he can't talk already. So this story is set in 1996, and I find this very fascinating, because as we can see from videos from the DARPA contests, until a few years ago, the robots really had difficulties walking, but I mean, we have already very good speech assistants. But so this is one point. So he did imagine something, but maybe not as it happened. And then it's a very interesting character of Susan Calvin. Apparently, he wrote her into his stories after people pointed out that there weren't any women in his stories before. So she's a robo-psychologist who got her PhD in 2008. Very funny, because for us, I mean, this is the present, not the future anymore. And but when the story is set, or most of the stories, she's already 75. So it's also our future. But what I wanted to say is that she kind of acts like cliche woman, so very clear. This becomes very clear in the story Liar. On the one hand, she's much smarter than her colleagues, but the way they talk about her is a bit weird. And yeah, it's an interesting example that people could imagine these robots and people living on Mars, humans living on Mars, but not think about gender equality. This was just a small thing I wanted to mention too. So my conclusion for today would be that technological solutions are not enough. Sorry?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to tell you that you have 4 minutes left.
Yeah, so I want to come to my conclusion. I have to make this louder, because I'm going to try later. I can't hear you very well anymore. So I think the technological solutions are not enough, as can be seen with the example from Biogen I mentioned at the beginning. So we still need somehow humans in the loop. But the question is what we are doing if the humans are somehow the problem, as with the data being put into Amazon's recruiting system. So I think, or I would suggest that the solution to this is some sort of a critical ethics by design. So where ethicists also stay critical, where ethicists are also being trained in technological questions to a certain extent to enable the interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary dialogue. And we should be very careful here to not reproduce stereotypes. So for instance, if we claim that women should be equally respected by the software, or also this also applies to other intersectional questions like the ethnic background and skin color and stuff like this, criteria like this. So we should keep in mind that we should not reproduce these problems and mistakes we made before. So thank you very much for your attention. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Well, thank you very much, Julia Maria Mönig, for your very inspiring talk and for your Hello, Shelley, again. Thank you for being on screen in time. And thank you for everyone to stick together and to come to listen to Shelley Park from the University of Central Florida in the USA. And she will present her paper with the title From Care-O-Bot to Humans, Psychoanalyzing Tech's Uncanny Valley Problem. So it's a big pleasure for me to announce your talk here at the technology session of the IAPh symposium. Shelley, the floor is yours. Oh, you please unmute your mic.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, very well. And
okay.
Now we hear you also.
Thank you. So I'm very excited to be able to have this discussion with Julia, because I think what we're doing is some intersecting work. So I'm interested specifically in robots here as they enter our social sphere. So unlike industrial robots, the capabilities of social robots depend on our ability to anthropomorphize them. They can't function as playmates, helpers, or companions unless we're willing to accept them as socially capable. So this is what makes Masahiro Mori's uncanny valley, what he terms the uncanny valley, a major barrier to the mass marketing of socially interactive robots. Social explanations and putative solutions for the uncanny valley have been offered, and I'm going to quickly run through some of them. Contra-typical engineering solutions, I advocate here that we rethink the uncanny valley problem from a feminist, decolonial perspective. My thinking is assisted by the marketing of the television show Humans, alongside the marketing of social robots themselves. The uncanny valley, as described by Mori, was a hypothesis concerning negative human reactions to human replicas. For example, lifelike dolls, puppets, or robots, which appear almost, but not exactly, like real human beings. We might expect a human observer's affinity for a replica to steadily increase as the replica becomes more familiar. However, when a replica gets too close to approximating human features, it instead elicits feelings of eeriness in many of us. Mori referred to this unexpected dip in our affinity for replicas as the uncanny valley. The phenomenon of human repulsion at robots that closely approximate humanness while retaining an inhuman element has dominated both scientific research on and cultural depictions of social robots. Horror films and dystopian science fiction deliberately elicit our sense of the uncanny to creep us out. Robot engineers, however, seek ways to avoid or suppress our sense of the uncanny. So why does a person's response to a human-like robot shift from empathy to revulsion as it approaches but fails to attain a lifelike appearance? Morey suggested that the eerie sensation we get when something is almost but not quite human may be an integral part of our instinct for self-preservation. He suggests it may be a sixth sense that protects us from proximal sources of danger, such as corpses, members of different species, and other entities we can closely approach. Morey advises designers of social robots and human prosthetics to pursue non-human design to avoid such human repulsion. Using eyeglasses as an example of a human prosthetic that fashions a new look rather than attempting to resemble real eyeballs, Morey suggests designers might stylize beautiful prosthetic hands that bend freely at the joints but still look and feel non-human. Many engineers have followed this advice, developing robots that move on wheels or grasp and gesture without flesh-like human appendages. Introduced in Japan, for example, Pepper has a wheeled bottom, short stature, and cartoon-like characteristics that make him human-like without verging into the uncanny valley. Made in the US, Jibo maintains an even larger distance from the human form as an 11-inch, 6-pound tabletop device whose body is made of aluminum, plastic, and glass, and whose face is an LCD touchscreen. A robot's familiarity depends in part on what it says or does. Despite dimensions closer to a desktop computer than a human, Jibo responds to voice commands and touch, recognizes faces, and builds profiles on its users in order to better serve them. Marketed as the world's first family robot, Jibo is touted as able to help every member of the family, promising to entertain and educate children, help parents communicate with one another, provide home security, know its users' tastes, and understand and respond to the needs and commands of its human owners. Using principles of Disney animation to bring it to life, Jibo elicits sympathetic reactions from humans through mischievous but friendly gestures. Consumers view Jibo as harmless, as childlike or cute, rather than intrusive or creepy. Jibo's design therefore effectively distracts us from the privacy we sacrifice when inviting a profiling technology into our homes. According to some, uncanniness derives from a mismatch between expectation and perception. In contrast to most objects and machines, humanoid robots create the expectation of human nature. This expectation is violated by a lack of emotional expression. So the addition of emotion is meant to decrease a sense of uncanniness. Witness the evolution of the German Carobot. Carobot 3 was a functional service robot able to provide mobility support or fetch and carry items for older users. Yet it was gesturally stiff and emotionally unresponsive. In contrast, the new and socially improved Carobot 4 is depicted as a gentleman who detects mood and reacts with facial expressions and gestures. In the promotional video, Carobot 4 holds out a red rose to a female client. He is described as flirtier than his predecessor. He won't just care for you, they say, he will care about you. Similarly, Pepper is described as having an emotion engine. Pepper won't clean the house or cook dinner, but he will cheer you up by playing a favorite song or tell you a joke if you look sad. Advertised as a robot with a heart, Pepper's goal is to maximize joy and minimize sadness in his environment. The potentially unnerving mismatch between human expectations of social interlocutors as emotionally capable and human perceptions of androids as potentially soulless is addressed here through marketing strategies. As social robotics evolves, the uncanny valley has also evolved. What started as an engineering problem, namely how do we build a robot that meets human needs and expectations, has now become a problem of persuasion, namely how can we manipulate human needs and expectations. Whether a machine does in fact care about us is less important than whether we're willing to treat it as if it does. Yet persuading us to anthropomorphize domestic robots may give rise to another version of uncanniness, one that reveals the psychosocial dimensions of the uncanny valley. To illustrate this, I turn from the engineering and marketing of social robots to the production and marketing of a TV series about social robots. Based on an award-winning Swedish science fiction drama, the English series Humans introduces us to a world in which artificial humans, or synths, are routinely purchased as nannies, maids, gardeners, sex workers, and healthcare aides. In purchasing synthetic humans for help around the house, flesh and blood humans quickly discover that these helpers can do much more than routine domestic tasks. Bonded with their primary users at time of purchase, these efficient, attentive, and beautiful caregivers tuck children into bed and provide sexual satisfaction for lonely spouses. Humans creators indicated that they did not intend the series to be read as a futuristic science fiction drama, but instead as depicting a parallel present. Indeed, the world that Humans depicts looks very much like our own, except for the presence of synths, AI who bear an uncanny resemblance to humans. The relationship between synths and their human users, moreover, is uncomfortably close to the gendered and racialized relationships between human caregivers and those who have historically benefited from their care. At the center of the series is Anita, a synth resembling, because played by, a young Asian woman who functions as a maid and nanny for a white middle-class family. In season 1, the jealous wife treats Anita as a dangerous intruder, while the attention-deprived husband enjoys and exploits the full range of her services. Freud described the uncanny, the unheimlich, the unhomely, as what is concealed and frightening in the familiar and agreeable, or vice versa. The uncanny, he says, unconsciously reminds us of our own id, our forbidden, repressed impulses. The uncanny is perceived as an external threat to our superego. However, our sense of uncanniness and the rejection of the monstrous as other is in fact a projection of our own repressed impulses onto something or someone else, who then becomes a scapegoat to be blamed for our own miseries. On Humans, Anita and her fellow synths are such scapegoats, convenient targets for suspicion and blame that divert attention from the taboo desires and everyday atrocities committed by humans themselves. The glittering luminescence of synths' artificial eyes marks them as creepy, as does the eerily calm and unnervingly precise ways in which they move and speak. However, it is our own ability to dissemble, to pretend, for example, to care about strangers, friends, or lovers when we do not, that should unnerve us. In eerily calm and unnervingly precise ways, Humans reminds us of our own inhumanity and what Arendt aptly called the banality of evil. As viewers, we are and should be made uncomfortable by a parallel present wherein a synth, uncannily resembling a live-in nanny, can be activated to sexually pleasure a man who has purchased her. Because of the uncanny resemblance between synths and humans, the activation of a synth's sexual program by a user signifies much more than a harmless act of self-pleasuring. Because she is bound to her primary user, the synth cannot resist his desire. Under such circumstances, the vacant, emotionless look in the synth's eyes as the man thrusts into her no longer signifies her creepiness. Instead, he now becomes creepy. So too does the parallel present that such scenes represent. Julia Kristeva draws on psychoanalytic analyses of the uncanny to develop her notion of abjection, a phenomenon wherein one reacts adversely to that which has been cast out of the symbolic order as unintelligible. For Kristeva, the abject, for example, human waste, a corpse, the foreigner, and we might add here a synth, exists in a liminal space between subject and object as the taboo elements of the self from which we try to distance ourselves. We experience the abject as uncanny when we recognize ourselves within that which we have cast off as other. When we are forced to face the abject, that which was once a part of us but is now repulsive, it is traumatic. We are unhomed by a breakdown in the distinction between what is self and what is other. Forced to confront the stranger within, we are horrified. As used by Butler, abjection may further describe the processes whereby the boundaries of the gendered and racialized self is formed by its violent expulsion of the not me, giving rise to homophobia, sexism, and racism. From a psychoanalytic perspective, such processes of othering can only be remedied by facing our own past. The parallel present depicted by humans is a technological future haunted by the past. This comes out vividly in the 2015 advertising blitz for the TV series. Using print ads, billboards, a physical store, social media accounts, actors paid to transport cyborg lookalikes throughout London, and a mock eBay auction, a fake company named Persona Synthetics advertised androids that were closer to humans than ever before. This television commercial features Sally.
Meet Sally. Hello. What can I do for you today? The help you've always wanted. She is faster, stronger, more capable than ever before. Sally is part of your family, a teacher, a helper, a friend. New generation Persona Synthetics.
Meet Sally, the help you've always wanted, a soothing female voiceover says, as an attractive brunette with a piercing but somewhat vacant gaze is seen folding sheets, chopping carrots, organizing kitchen canisters, and serving dinner. Sally is faster, stronger, and more capable than ever before. She is also part of your family, a helper, a teacher, a friend, the voice continues as we watch Sally take care of the family's children. The fake advertising campaign elicited 100,000 searches for the product on Google and 500,000 visits to the website, where the campaign was revealed to be a hoax. Some found the idea of actual synthetic humans creepy and were relieved to discover they did not yet exist. But others were disappointed. "I want one," responded a reader named Cyborg Girl. "This would do wonders for the elderly, disabled, and generally struggling human. I hope this is a test on the reaction for the real thing." This wanting is both old and new, both intelligible and yet disconcerting. Humans have always needed and wanted care. Indeed, this basic observation is at the heart of feminist arguments to include care as a morally salient category in ethical theorizing. The desire for care reflects human vulnerability and dependency on others as a fact of life. What is unsettling in Cyborg Girl's desire, a desire which is not, of course, hers alone, is the longing for care as a product to be bought and sold in the marketplace. Rather than a longing for human relationship, this desire bespeaks a longing for care that demands nothing, not even gratitude or simple recognition in return. What the fictional Sally promises is superhuman strength and efficiency combined with subhuman status. She will do everything we want without requiring we treat her as a moral subject. As the increasing demands on our time make it ever more difficult to care adequately for ourselves or others, it is understandable that we might seek assistance. However, the desire to purchase Sally, not merely as a machine, but as a member of our family, a helper, a teacher, a friend, is a little creepy. Humans capitalize on the uncanny resemblance between synthetic humans and biological humans to draw our attention to the mistreatment of caregivers in a world where caregiving is commodified. Importantly, this mistreatment is not new, nor is the commodification of caregiving. Both the legacy of women's unpaid caregiving and the legacies of slavery and indentured servitude are evoked by humans' fake ad campaign. Persona Synthetics offered two models of synth for sale. Both had all-day batteries and fully customizable personalities. One, Sally, was a white female synth. The other, Charlie, was a black male synth. The closer to human than ever before, prototypes were advertised as a lifestyle choice on the website and at a temporary storefront in London, including life-size models. They were also put up for auction on eBay. All of this, but most notably the idea of auctioning a black body considered to be almost but not quite human as domestic help, should feel creepy. As the colonial past intrudes upon the technological present, we need to think about what it means to want such an advertising campaign to be true and to be eager to purchase such prototypes. Like feminists, post-colonial theorists have drawn on Freud's concept of the uncanny to elucidate the psychic and cultural results of repressing our past. Homi Bhabha describes the disorientation attending xenophobia as a feeling of being unhomed. Like Freud's uncanny, Bhabha's unhomely resides at the edge of what is knowable as a result of repression. Our unwillingness to speak about the unspeakable, says Bhabha, leaves a hole in the fabric of our social as well as psychic realities. This can only be repaired by releasing the unspoken from erasure and reinscribing it within the known, the familiar. Bhabha's post-colonial rendering of our sense of unhomeliness has elements in common with Frantz Fanon's insistence that politics and psychology are inseparable. Only by articulating the psychic life of the colonial encounter, says Fanon, are we able to undo the damage of that traumatic encounter. The legacies of colonialism will continue to haunt our social encounters, doing
Shelley,
damage.
I'm sorry. You have 5
Uh-huh.
minutes left. I'm sorry.
Okay. Doing damage to both the colonized and the colonizer until we confront the horrors of this shared history. The specter that haunts humans and our own parallel present is not the social costs of humanizing the non-human, but the inhumanity of humans. At the center of this fictional drama about a parallel present are a series of ethical and political questions concerning our own experiences and practices of care and carelessness in an era wherein the echoes of past traumas reverberate in our technological dreams. And so to conclude, what I want to suggest is that rather than doing all these engineering solutions to suppress the uncanny, we actually want to confront and enhance and make clear the uncanniness of what we're doing. With that said, I will end. Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Shelley Park, for your great talk on the uncanny or the desire for the uncanny, maybe even. This gives a lot of questions, I think, on the human itself. I say it like this.